And welcome back, everybody, to another Touchpoint Group Banking App Insight session for the month of July 2022. And this session, we are looking at the US Nationals Bank, and we're going to mix it up a little bit today. We're going to look at the top of the tree. And why is it that Bank of America is consistently just sitting behind Citibank and not quite closing the gap? And when it comes down to it, a little bit like sports and those top performing sports teams, it is the little things done well, consistently over time, that make the big difference in the end between those two or three top teams at the top of the league. And Tony Patrick, welcome, my friend. Let's rip into it. Will you just give us a bit of a walkthrough and have a look at those two banks and where we're going with them?
Brilliant. Thanks, Glenn. And as you mentioned, we're looking at US Nationals today, and that covers Citibank, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and Chase. And of course, we cover the others in separate sessions, as you can see on the right there. But let's jump straight into US Nationals and see, first of all, what are the trends we're seeing. So what we can see here is, now we covered off some of the ones at the bottom here in our last round, which is looking at Chase and Wells Fargo, for example. Now, a little thing here, Wells Fargo yet to recover to the levels it had at the end of last year, which was sort of up above 4 on average, and it's gone slightly down this month. If we look at Chase, there's it's that old sort of whack-a-mole thing where they go up and down, and at the moment they're down for the past 2 months. So on the past trends, we probably expect them to jump up in the next month, but we don't know yet. But of course, the talk today is just having a look at why we can see here that Citibank is actually consistently sitting above Bank of America. And it's a consistent gap across time. The past 12 months is pretty much sitting there, except for a bit of a downtrend here in October last year for Bank of America. So what we'll look at today is, why is that gap there? And as Glenn said, it's not something major. Bank of America is doing well, but how do they close that gap? And it's the small things that matter. So let's go in further and have a look. So first of all, before we jump right into it, it's nice to have a look at what's the distribution of the scores. Now, this is a 5-point scale from 1 to 5, just looking at the scores for each of these brands. So in the case of, if we look at Bank of America at the top here, we're looking at this 73.6%. That's how many people have given a 5 over the past 3 months, just to have a look at what's going on. So 73.6% compared to about 81 for Citibank. So there's a bit of a gap there of about 6 percentage points. So that just shows to be good, you have to sort of get to that level of having about 80% of your customers giving you a 5. And that's a tough task for a lot of banks. At the other end of the scale, though, it's interesting. What we can see is those giving a 1 for Bank of America is about 11, and those giving a 1 for Citibank is about 5. So Citibank still has room to improve, but again, there's a lot more room to improve for Bank of America. Interestingly, that gap of 10.8 and 5.2, it's about 5, say. That's similar to the gap they're getting at the top end. So essentially, Bank of America needs to switch out the additional 5% from their 1s and then add that to their 5s. So there's some gains for them to get up to that level. So let's move into what's going on with a bit more detail. So what we're looking at here is, now we might have seen before, we've used this research approach looking at the SURF analysis around security, usability, reliability, etc. But what we're looking at here are 3 core topics that you need to succeed on to get your app right. So these are what we're calling the foundational attributes, similar to our SURF analysis we used previously, but also these core journeys. So we should go down to individual journeys in the app and see if you're doing well on those or not, and you're obviously comparing those to others. So we can see there, of course, that we're seeing that Bank of America is down on each of these things. We expect that with their score. But you can see that the core journeys has a gap there of about 0.5 out of the 3.8 that Citibank's getting. And the foundational attributes, the things like speed and logging in and things like that, is a gap of about 0.3. So not as bad. So let's have a look, though, at those core journeys, because that's the biggest gap I can see in here. I suppose apart from functionality, but we know the biggest driver of the score are these first two, whereas the incremental functionality gives you some extra boost at a later stage. So I'll just close this right panel for the moment. But what I can see here is that basically it's the gap on each of these journeys. And these are the most important journeys for customers. So things like depositing a check, updating your mobile app, paying bills, monitoring account activity, and things like that. So lots of these things, and these are the large majority of people, that's what they're using these apps for. And this is what they're talking about when they give us this feedback. So yeah, across the board, we can see a few things. Making P2P payments, we can see that Bank of America is doing slightly better than Citibank. So again, then Citibank has probably got some room to improve again on that area. So one thing I can see here is I want to have a look at, which is paying bills via the app. So Citibank's getting a 4.2, whereas we've got for Bank of America, it's sitting at 3.5. Let's have a quick glance at that from the view of the customer. So let's have a look at that for the paying bills for Bank of America, and have a look on the right panel in exactly what customers are actually saying. Now, the first glance with this colored view you've got here, you can see that there's a few bits of red coming through. So that's sort of anything that's a detractor, so those ones and twos. We get a few of the blues in here, which are sort of the middle levels, and a few fours and fives. That's sort of a mix of things that are going on. We can also look in here and see, look, in general, it's convenient, that's fine. An interesting point here, though, about that journey, at this one here giving a 2, is saying, look, it takes 7 clicks to actually complete my credit card payment. So again, there's some hints in there about what Bank of America can be doing, is making that process simpler, less clicks, and a more straightforward process. Now, let's switch across and have a look at what comments are coming through for Citibank in this paying bills area. That will come across on the right. Now, we do get a couple of ones in there, but what we're getting here is, so there's obviously still some room to improve, but what we're getting here is pretty much a whole lot of green. And you can see it coming through there, apart from a couple that are outliers, which is why that score is sitting at 4.2 rather than 3.5. So again, that's one thing Bank of America do is actually update that journey for their customers about paying bills. So let's step forward and have a look at something else. So this is an interesting view. So I'll explain what we're seeing here is basically it's those 3 key areas of foundational attributes, core journeys, and incremental functionality. How much does that impact your score? So what I can see here is when customers talk about these foundational attributes, which we'll look at in a moment in a bit of detail, it's actually having a positive contribution on the score for Citibank. So we can see there it's got a positive contribution of about plus 0.29. So it's adding a really positive aspect to the score, so customers enjoy that. So for Bank of America, it's also positive, but only just at 0.05. So there's some room to improve there, definitely for Bank of America. And also the core journeys, both banks have a slightly negative experience. So both have to improve on those journeys, but Bank of America has to improve more. Let's step into and have a look at those core journeys and see how much they're impacting the score. So this is breaking apart those fundamental functionality. And we're seeing here that usability is one of the biggest things, it's the biggest differences we can see between these two banks. So again, let's have a quick look at Bank of America first and see what that looks like in the scheme of things on the right. Now, we see there's a fair bit of positive stuff because we can see the score is positive, it's having a positive contribution, but we are getting a bit of a mix in here of these ones coming through. A few ones about, it's a difficult service, and a few fours in there as well. So it's interesting, the score here is still 4.6, but we sort of get those ones and threes that are coming through. If we compare that directly to Citibank, let's have a look here. Pretty much you're getting all fives. You get a 4 every now and then. So rather than those ones and threes that pop up every now and then for Bank of America, you're pretty much with Citibank getting all fives coming through into the mix. So a very positive outcome. So for me, there's a few usability issues for Bank of America that need to improve, and a few reliability issues that need to pick up on as well. So some things to work on for both, but we see that Bank of America still has a lot of room to close that gap.
That's fantastic, mate. And so that's it for the US Nationals for July of 2022 with the banking apps. If you want, feel free to hit us up and we will give you a walkthrough on your bank. Have a great one, folks. See you next month.